Elon Musk has been making a lot of shocking statements lately. In an interview, he said that by 2036, money will be useless. The Wall Street Journal exclusively revealed that he's preparing to cut off his business in China. Musk was quick to deny it, saying there's no such thing. At first glance, these two things seem completely unrelated, but in reality, it's a romantic story about business survival and a sci-fi utopia. Is Musk's denial true? And why did he say that money will be useless in 10 years? On July 30th, the Wall Street Journal released an exclusive report. Tesla is considering separating its China business to pave the way for a merger with SpaceX. According to two people familiar with the discussions quoted in the article, some Tesla executives have already received instructions to prepare for the separation of the China business. Another source said that Tesla's advisory team is weighing all possible options, selling, spinning off, or even shutting down the business entirely. Musk quickly denied the rumor, saying that this matter has never come up in any discussions and calling it an absurd fake news story. Tesla China also followed up by releasing a statement calling it false information. The Wall Street Journal says it's true, while Musk says it's false. If you believe Musk, then you're being fooled by him. Musk says that the China business has never been discussed, but over the past 18 months, his actions have said otherwise. In November 2025, according to another Wall Street Journal report, Tesla ordered all suppliers to remove every Chinese component from vehicles made in its US factories, with the goals completing this within 1 to 2 years. Right after that, Tesla stopped selling models in the US that use lithium iron phosphate batteries made in China, citing tariff issues and electric vehicle tax credits as the reasons. Then Tesla announced that it would start making lithium iron phosphate batteries itself in Nevada, no longer importing them from China. Then, in March of this year, the main event happened. Tesla announced the TerraFab plan. So what is TerraFab? It means investing $25 billion to build their own chip factory in Austin, Texas. Musk said this will be a super factory, much bigger than before. At the same time, Tesla signed a $16.5 billion chip deal with Samsung, with production taking place at Samsung's factory in Taylor, Texas, aiming for production by 2027. Together, these two investments add up to $41.5 billion. In recent years, Musk has never spent this much money on any single thing. The closest was his acquisition of Twitter, and both of these investments are for one purpose: to move chip production from Taiwan back to the United States. Why is he doing this? Back in March, he actually said something about this on Senator Ted Cruz's podcast. If China invades Taiwan, then the whole world will no longer be able to get advanced AI chips. He said that all high-end chips are currently made in Taiwan, and that manufacturing them in the US is essential for national security. On the other hand, Tesla has also been quietly doing something, moving its Chinese parts suppliers who originally supplied the Shanghai factory to Southeast Asia and Mexico. This includes companies like Sanha, Tupo, Xingjian, Better, and Shuseng, among others. This group of Chinese suppliers has already been gradually approved to build factories in Thailand. Another group has gone to Monterrey, Mexico, right next to Tesla's planned factory there. So just look at what Musk is actually doing. He's planning to make his own chips, stop importing batteries from China, move parts suppliers out of China, and then says publicly, splitting off the China business has never been discussed. It's like a man telling his wife, "You're the only one I'll ever love in my life." But then you check his phone and find out he's already changed his payroll account to his mom's bank account. That's someone lying with their words, but their actions are telling the real story. Some people might question, even if that's the case, it doesn't mean he's going to shut down the factory in China. That's true, but we need to think a bit deeper. Why is he making all these moves? Because there are dramatic changes happening on the other side of the chessboard. In the first quarter of 2026, Tesla's retail sales in China dropped by 16% year on year, and in March alone, they fell by 24%. Why is that? Because in January, the Xiaomi U7 was launched, and within just 1 month, it knocked the Model Y off the throne as the best-selling car in China. In February, the Geely Jingyu surpassed both Tesla and BYD to become the best-selling model in China, and its price is only 70,000 RMB. Meanwhile, even the cheapest version of Tesla's Model 3 costs 240,000 RMB. But speaking of this, I want to ask you all, one is the Geely, which costs 70,000 RMB, just a little over 10,000 US dollars, and the other is the Tesla, which cost over 30,000. If you were to buy one, which would you choose? If you'd pick the Geely, type a J. If you'd pick the Tesla, type a T. In China, for electric cars under 100,000 RMB, there are models like BYD Seagull and Geely Xingyue. In the 100,000 to 200,000 RMB range, there are several BYD models and also Xpeng, but Tesla doesn't have any products in these price brackets at all. The 200,000 to 300,000 RMB range used to be Tesla's stronghold, but now Xiaomi has entered the market. They launched in 2024, and in just this year, they've already sold over 200,000 units. Going further up, there are also Li Auto, NIO, and Huawei cars. From the bottom to the top, every price segment is blocking Tesla in. This is reflected in the financial reports. In the fourth quarter of last year, Tesla's net profit was only $840 million, a year-on-year plunge of 61%. That's definitely not a healthy number. So it's not easy to make money in China anymore. Not only is it hard to earn, it's also hard to take the money out. On July 1st, the Chinese Communist Party's number 837 regulation on outbound investment officially came into effect. Although this regulation targets Chinese entities investing abroad, it does have a real indirect impact on Tesla's operations in China. Let's suppose Musk really wants to split off and sell Tesla's China business. Who would be the ideal buyer? It would either be private capital or state-owned enterprises, right? But under this number 837 regulation, any buyer who wants to take over such a large-scale asset like Tesla China, especially when it involves a cross-border equity structure, will have to go through a review by the Chinese Communist Party. In other words, if Musk wants to sell, who he can sell to, at what price, and when the deal can go through, all of that is up to the CCP to decide. Most importantly, for Tesla to transfer the money it earns in China back to the United States, it relies on the channel of remitting profits through dividends. Then, from the end of last year to the beginning of this year, China's State Administration of Foreign Exchange introduced a bunch of new regulations, including stricter reviews for large dividend remittances, requiring proof of legitimacy for related party transactions, and even stricter withholding tax policies, among others. And this is what's really giving Musk a headache. Every single transfer of money back to the US has to go through a review, taxes have to be paid, and you have to prove that, hey, this money isn't just profit shifting. How are you supposed to prove that? So the profits are not just a little bit less, and it's also hard to move the money out. Do you really think Musk doesn't want to plan ahead? So do you think that over the past 10 plus months, his actions have been preparing to leave China? If you think so, type yes for me. If you think it might just be a coincidence, type coincidence. Let me tell ya, Musk really does have to plan ahead. Why is that? Because the knife hanging over his neck is SpaceX. On the surface, SpaceX is just launching rockets, but in reality, it's one of the most important defense contractors in the United States. It launches classified military payloads for the Pentagon, it's a core supplier for the Iron Dome missile defense system, and its Starlink provides communications for the front lines in Ukraine. In 2025, 20.9% of SpaceX's revenue will come from US government contracts. In 2026, contracts from the Pentagon alone will exceed $8 billion. And in June, as we all know, SpaceX completed the largest IPO in the history of the US capital markets with a company valuation of $1.77 trillion. Now, looking back at that Wall Street Journal report, Tesla is considering spinning off its China business in order to pave the way for a merger with SpaceX. Doesn't it all start to make sense now? SpaceX is a US defense contractor, and Tesla has factories in China. If you put these two things under the same publicly listed company, there's no way it would pass a US national security review. Now, some attentive viewers might wonder, who says SpaceX and Tesla have to merge? Can't they just remain independent companies? Well, but Musk really wants to merge them. First of all, he's already made it clear in public. On July 22nd, during Tesla's second quarter earnings call, Musk proactively brought up the relationship between SpaceX and Tesla, saying that the two companies are overlapping in more and more areas. This includes X.AI, which SpaceX previously acquired, as well as the Terafab chip factory we mentioned earlier, which SpaceX and Tesla have just jointly invested in, among others. He said the two companies are converging and merging together. Secondly, this is also reflected in SpaceX's prospectus, where the word Tesla is mentioned 87 times. Most importantly, it shows Musk's style. In 2016, Tesla acquired SolarCity. You should know that Musk was also the chairman of that company, so he was basically selling with one hand and buying with the other. In 2025, XIA launched X, and this year, before SpaceX went public, SpaceX acquired XIA. Musk really likes to put all his companies into one basket so that he can maintain control. At SpaceX, Musk owns 42% of the economic interest, but at Tesla, he only holds about 13% of the shares. At Tesla, he has to watch the board's attitude when he speaks. That's also why, over the past few years, he has repeatedly threatened to leave Tesla and demanded more control from the board. If these two companies merged, Musk could instantly go from being Tesla's manager to the emperor of the entire empire. And if these two companies merged, it would make their business dealings with each other so much more convenient. Now, with SpaceX's Starlink being installed in Tesla cars, all the pricing, payments, and equity relationships between these two public companies have to be disclosed to shareholders, undergo independent board review, and guard against related party transaction lawsuits. As for the Terafab chip factory, this issue has already come up. There are already a bunch of lawyers calculating who exactly owes whom and how much. A few months ago, the president of SpaceX said something very important to CNBC. He said that merging Tesla and SpaceX would make Elon's life a bit easier. So Musk is never going to give up on this merger. For him, it's not a question of whether to do it, but when to do it. So once this merger inevitably takes place, SpaceX, as a U.S. defense contractor, would be acquiring a company, Tesla, that has factories in China, gets half its battery supply from China, and has data from millions of cars circulating daily within China. There's simply no way this could ever pass a U.S. national security review. A JP Morgan analyst once said that this merger would face enormous regulatory challenges, especially with resistance coming from both China and the United States. So Musk only has three options. First, abandon the merger, which is highly unlikely. Second, go through with the merger but keep the China operations, which definitely wouldn't pass the U.S. national security review. Third, merge and cut off the China operations in advance. It would be painful, but it's doable. And this is something Musk absolutely would not have done 4 years ago. 4 years ago, he was riding high in China, making headlines with statements that shocked the world, especially ones that really annoyed overseas Chinese communities. 4 years ago, on October 7th, 2022, the Financial Times published an in-depth interview with Musk, in which he made two statements that stunned the world. The first statement was about Taiwan. He suggested setting up a special administrative region for Taiwan that all parties could accept. Although it wouldn't make everyone happy, he believed this arrangement could be even more relaxed than Hong Kong's. What he meant was turning democratic Taiwan into a special administrative region of China. At the time, Qin Gong, the Chinese ambassador to the US, immediately tweeted his approval, while Taiwan's Minister of Defense, Chiu Ko-cheng, announced in the legislative yuan that the military would no longer use any Teslas, and the 7 existing Model 3s would also be taken out of service. The second shocking statement was about the Taiwan Strait. He believed that conflict in the Taiwan Strait was inevitable and said that if war broke out, the global economy could lose up to 30%. Apple would be in some trouble, but Tesla wouldn't be too affected because Tesla has a factory in Shanghai. Listen to that. That was Musk in 2022. 2 years later, in 2024, he joined Trump's camp. In 2025, he said on Ted Cruz's podcast that chips are essential to U.S. national security. This year, China's policies and the pressure on the electric vehicle industry completely woke him up. Now, Tesla's Shanghai factory is still producing, but Musk has already moved his chips back to Texas. Batteries have been relocated from China to Nevada, and part suppliers have shifted from Shanghai to Thailand and Mexico. At this point, he says he hasn't discussed splitting off the China business. Do you believe that? But aside from these practical business and political calculations, I also discovered a very interesting aspect, one that might be unique to Musk's own sci-fi dream scenario. Friends, listen closely. Let's see if what I'm about to say could actually be true. For this part, we have to start with Musk's interview with The Economist on July 20th. Here, Musk once again made a shocking statement. Editor-in-Chief Zanny asked him, "What do you think about the impact of AI on the economy?" He casually replied, "Money won't matter in 2036. That is, by 2036, money will no longer be important. The editor-in-chief laughed on the spot and said, "I'm not so sure your shareholders would agree with that."
Prediction: money won't matter in 2036. I'm not sure that the people who bought your shares think that money won't matter in 2036. Well, what do you want money for? You want money for goods and services. Yeah, right? You want money for, obviously, food, housing, transport, entertainment. Well, if those things become so abundant that robots and AI are providing more goods and services than any human could possibly consume, then what do you need money for?
Musk's logic is that when AI and robots are able to produce everything we humans consume, whether it's food, goods, or services, and they can make more and more of it to the point of surplus, then what would we even use money for at that point? For example, let's say there's a robot at your doorstep that bakes bread for you 24/7 and it doesn't charge you a cent. In that case, would you still need to spend money to buy bread? You wouldn't need to, right? So in Musk's vision, in the future, AI and robots will be like that. But they won't just bake bread, they'll be able to do everything. Build cars, construct houses, write code, grow crops, provide medical care, teach classes, you name it. So if humans don't need to work anymore, how will we survive? Musk's solution is called universal high income. He said that at that time, the Treasury should just write everyone a check. Basically, the government would pay people every month, not because you worked, but because society is so wealthy that even if they just give you money, you couldn't spend it all. Then the editor asked, if the government keeps printing money, won't that cause inflation? Musk said, no, it won't. Because A, I will make things cheaper and cheaper. You'll have more money in your hands, but the things you want to buy will keep dropping in price. When you balance those two out, it actually leads to deflation. So where do these checks come from? And who will the taxes be collected from? Musk replied, income distribution will be the next major political battle. And then he stopped talking about it. Friends, at this point, please take a moment to imagine what kind of world Musk is describing. AI makes everything, robots can do all the work, and the government gives you a living allowance every month. You don't have to do anything. The editor-in-chief immediately exclaimed, "The world you're describing is what many people call space communism." This might sound like a fantasy, but for Musk, he truly believes in it. And he's believed in it for 30 years. His whole philosophy comes from a British science fiction writer named Ian Banks. Starting in 1987, Banks began writing a series of novels called the Culture series, using 10 books to depict an entire interstellar civilization. In the Culture, humans, aliens, and AI have merged into one vast civilization. All material production is handled by a super AI called the Mines. There is no work, no scarcity, and it's explicitly stated that money is a relic from a barbaric era in this civilization. Musk started reading this series when he was 18, and he's been reading it for decades. In 2018, he publicly said that he was a Banks-style utopian anarchist. The names he gave to SpaceX's autonomous landing ships, like Of Course I Still Love You and Just Read the Instructions, are all names of ships from the Culture series. In 2016, when Musk founded his brain-computer interface company, he initially called it Neuralace in public. Both the name and the brain-computer interface technology were concepts borrowed from the Culture novels. Later, the company was renamed Neuralink. So Musk is someone who believes that AI, combined with robotics and unlimited energy supply, will lead humanity into a moneyless utopian world. If you take a closer look at his companies, you'll notice that they all seem to be building pieces of a puzzle for a utopian world. Take Tesla, for example. On the surface, it's making electric cars, but at its core, it's about unlimited energy, photovoltaics, and energy storage, as well as creating AI-powered autonomous driving physical terminals that can operate across the continent. Optimus, the humanoid robot, is about putting an AI brain into a human-like body to replace humans in all dangerous and monotonous physical labor. This is the source of labor. xAI is building the super general-purpose brain for the utopia. Neuralink, the brain-computer interface company, is designed to connect ordinary humans with super AI to prevent humans from being marginalized or even eliminated in the age of AI. And SpaceX is like buying backup insurance for this utopia. If humanity can't stay on Earth anymore, we can just move to Mars. From energy, brainpower, and labor to human-machine interfaces, and finally a backup for civilization. Isn't this the utopia from our culture? Take a moment to really think about it. If you agree, please give me a like to let me know. So the next question is, with so many AIs and so many robots and the need for unlimited energy, who's going to build all of this? Who's going to build the factories and generate the electricity? Musk thinks it will be China. At this year's Davos Forum in January, he said something that was reported as a big deal by Global Times at the time. He said that China's industrial capacity is about 3 times that of the United States, and China's electricity production is more than 3 times that of the US. He also said that we have no way to beat China on the human level. Our only chance is on the robotics level. So in the conversation with his agent, he said that this AI race is very likely to be won by China. This sounds a bit hard to understand because in Musk's worldview, AI plus robots plus unlimited energy supply will lead humanity into a utopian world. And in this formula, the hardest part isn't AI or robots, but the unlimited supply of energy. And right now, China has more electricity than the United States, so he thinks, hey, maybe China will win. I don't really agree with this viewpoint. Friends, if you agree with me, leave a comment and let me know. In his mind, whoever controls electricity holds the ticket to the post-currency era. So let's suppose China really is the first to cross that line. What would happen then? In Banks' novels, utopia is anarchic, free, and everyone is equal, with AI as a benevolent guardian. But that's just fiction. In reality, if China, a system that puts the party's security and stability above individual free will, were the first to enter this kind of AI and robot utopia, that would be truly terrifying. Is this what Musk wants? Of course not. So from this perspective, everything he's doing now is about taking back every piece of the utopian puzzle into his own hands. For example, spending $40 billion to build Terafab because chips are the brain of the utopia, and that brain needs to be brought back to the United States. He's mass-producing the Optimus robot himself because robots are the hands and feet of the utopia, and those need to be under his own control, and so on and so forth. But the Tesla factory in China is the only piece he's still sending out, so he will definitely cut it off. It's just a matter of how and when is the golden moment to do so. Friends, this all sounds a lot like a wild sci-fi fantasy, doesn't it? But you have to keep in mind, Musk is a genius who can't be understood with ordinary logic. 20 years ago, when he wanted to build rockets to send humans to Mars, the whole internet laughed at him. Then he actually ushered humanity into the era of electric vehicles. He's always been driven by grand visions and dreams. He really is a trailblazer of our time. Maybe he really is worried that the utopian post-currency era he envisions will end up being dominated by China? What do y'all think? Leave me a comment and let me know. Alright, that's all for our discussion today. Today's topic was definitely a wild one, with lots of fresh perspectives and viewpoints. So about Musk saying that by 2036, money will no longer matter? Friends, what's your take on that? Let's keep the conversation going in the comments section. If you enjoyed my show, don't forget to give me a like before you leave. If you're new here, welcome to True Perspective. Please subscribe and feel free to share my videos with more friends. And don't forget about the fan favorite hype feature. Every interaction you make helps my videos reach a wider audience, so more people can see the results of my hard work. Alright, I'd like to thank everyone here in advance. Thank you all for watching. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you again next Tuesday at the same time here on True Perspective. Bye-bye.